Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm Brian Doyle here with you. And I'm pretty excited about today's episode. This is somebody that I've wanted to have a much deeper conversation with for a long time. But when you see this person come on camera, you'll see probably why it didn't happen until now. But really excited to have this gentleman join me. Welcome, Alex Farling, to the podcast.
Hey, Brian,
Hey,
super
Alex,
excited
how
to be
are
here.
you?
I'm living the
Yes.
dream, man. Life is good. We just got back from DattoCon and we're I say this is the beginning of the Q4 sprint because before we know it, we'll have done 8 or 9 shows in Q4 and everybody will feel like their life is crazy. They haven't slept in their own bed in a month and we'll all be ready for a really long nap in January.
I wasn't sure if I was going to be seeing you with a hotel backdrop or what you got going on today. So I'm glad I caught you at home at least.
Yeah, DattoCon's in Miami, so we got to drive home right afterwards. But I'm literally only home till next week, and then I'm off to do a couple other events.
Beautiful. Well, you are a well-traveled human being. There's no doubt about it. But
Yeah.
I think we want to kick off, Alex. I think most of the community probably knows who you are, but I'm sure there are some listeners that don't know much about you, much about your background. So, if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit of the story of how you became an MSP, and then all the wonderful things you've done since.
Oh boy, how I became an MSP. I got laid off. I was teaching corporate. I was a corporate trainer. I worked in a Dell tech support outsource facility. We were a
Yep.
company that had an office in Vegas and an office in Dover, Delaware. I ran training for the Dover, Delaware outfit. We trained about 18. We had about 1,800 active seats of tier one Dell tech support, Dimension and Optiplex support back in the days where I was there actually when the original Pentium 4 rolled out. So we did. Thank you for calling Dell Technical Support. This is Bob. How can I help you? We did it in a town that only had 30,000 people that were not actually attached to the Air Force Base. They had about another 10,000 people. It's a really small town. I always used to joke that we had to teach the difference between left click and right click on a mouse before we could teach them tech support. So the tech support's they come from exactly where you think they do, and they're exactly as unqualified when you get them off the script. But in 2002, the world was weird and things were starting to get outsourced and the economy starting to globalize. And we lost the contract to India. And that whole thing was going overseas. And I got called into HR and they said, we're not hiring anymore. So we're not training anymore. And we'll eventually wind this whole thing down. But training is the first thing to go. And I got walked out. And I stopped at this little corner. I would have called it an IT company of some sort. They did some break fix and some commercial support, and then they did AS400 programming. And my mother was an AS400 programmer there at the time, and it was just on my way home. So I popped my head in and said, "You'll never believe what happened to me today." And the guy that owned the place overheard it, and my family had known his family forever. And he walked over and he set the keys on the counter and he said, "I'm ready to retire. Why don't you take my job?" So I got like 12 weeks of severance and I had a job literally as fast as I could drive across town. I realized that it was definitely something I wanted to do. It was exactly what I'd been meant to do. And then I also realized that I could never work for his daughter. I spent about 90 days there. I thanked them for the opportunity. The owners had been very super supportive of me. I thanked them for the opportunity. And I left to go work off my non-compete. Before 2 years later, I acquired a break fix shop, mom and pop computers, one commercial customer for like $8,000. And over the next 17 years, turned it into a business first IT company and then an MSP in 2008, and then exited to a customer. I'm sorry, to a competitor, one county over from me in 2020. So quite a ride.
Yeah, it's amazing how those rides start. We were talking a little bit about that before we started recording today.
You said the
This
words.
industry is littered with accidental entrepreneurs, right? I mean, my 30-second backstory is very similar. It was 2001, and we were part of the dot-com boom. The rise and the fall. We went from 8 employees to 52 employees, back down to 8 at the IT integrator I worked for at that point in time, inside of 6 months. And the CEO came to myself and what became my future partner and said, "Hey, I don't know what you guys do. I don't even know who your customers are anymore, but I can't pay you after next Friday. So if you want to make it a go and try, I won't stop you from taking those customers forward." And we needed paychecks. So we went and did the road show, and we were fortunate enough to have a number of them come with us. And that's how we got started. And I think if you talk to a lot of MSPs, that's kind of the backstory. And we're going to probably circle back to that in a few minutes after we talk about your endeavors after being an MSP.
Yeah,
But,
that's been
that's really where I think after your MSPs, where you and I started crossing paths in a different way.
yeah.
And, we always said, or we still say inside of VCIO Toolbox, it's good to not have Alex as a competitor anymore. You guys were tough competitors.
I appreciate that. We worked hard at it. I had a couple of business partners that were just just absolutely workaholics. There's no other way to say it. Those guys just crushed it out. They built a great product. I had the luxury of being the guy who drew the idea on the back of a napkin and then didn't have to implement very much of it.
Yep.
The original plan was that I wouldn't even work there. I was running an MSP. I had a day job. I told you this in the green room. I was a CEO and not particularly a very good one. So I had my hands full, and so I never really planned to work there. But as fate would have it, my attorney called me one day and said, "I met the guy who's going to buy your MSP." And I said, "This is 2000. This is 2020, like in the middle of COVID. I've got customers I've got a customer that's a dry cleaner that hasn't cashed a check from anybody in 90 days. Like he's down to 5% of his revenue." I'm like, "Brian, my book of business isn't what it used to be. There's really no way that I could sell this for what it's worth." And he says, "Alex, you pay me a lot of money to do what I tell you to do. So shut the F up and take the phone call." So I shut up and I took the phone call, and 45 days later, I wasn't an MSP. It happened really fast. I got a fair offer. It may be a little on the low side, but I was ready to be done. I knew that there was other opportunity elsewhere. Lifecycle Insights was waiting in the wings. We had launched that in March of 2019. This was August of 2020. So a year later, we're starting to get some traction. We could see the hockey stick coming. It was definitely my passion project at that point. So sold it. My partners slid over and made some room for me to come make noise at Lifecycle Insights, and it was off to the races from there.
Yep. Yeah, and certainly, you guys brought a lot of awareness to the need for VCIO services done. You and I have talked about it really the proper way, right? There's a few ways to approach it, and one of the things that I always felt good about, like you feel good about your competitors if they're out there rising tides too, right? And
Yep.
you guys were always talking about it from a strategic element. We try to talk about it there, outcome driven results, not just showing up and throwing up with statistics and performance charts. And
In other words,
I felt it was good for the industry because bottom line is the more people that can raise visibility, the more opportunity there is for all of us.
well, I mean, let's be honest. I was completely unqualified by all comparisons to the true VCIOs in the space. I didn't think we were building a VCIO tool at the time. The industry adopted it and made it a VCIO tool. I was building a budget forecasting tool because I had a customer in 2008 that I went in to say, maybe it was I don't remember, whenever Windows XP went away, whatever time in my past, that might have been 2010. But when Windows 7's coming, I wrapped up most of my customers. I had a guy who I had never managed to convert from break fix to managed services. So he was low on my list of people to deal with. But he's a great human being and kind of a mentor to me in my business, just a great customer. I went in and sat down with him with 90 days notice and said, "Hey, I need 30 grand to replace all your Windows XP machines." And he looked at me and he says, "I know I need to do this and I'm going to do it, but let me tell you something. If you ever come surprise me like this again, I'm going to take you out back and shoot you." And this is in Sussex County, Delaware. There's more chickens than people by like 8 to 1. Dude has a shotgun rack in the back of his truck, and he fishes the white marlin open every year. Like, not only does he have a shotgun to shoot me with, but he has the means to lose the body. So I took this kind of personally, and I set out on a mission to say, I need to take surprises away from my customers. And that was what Lifecycle Insights was built for. It just so happens that the dumb sales guy came up with something that worked really well for VCIOs too. And so it converted very quickly into an account management platform. And then honestly, we still told everybody, like, we'll stop using the words QBR and VCIO when you guys stop Googling for it. But that wasn't really what it was intended to be. It was really a tool to build streamlined account management for MSPs because we were bad at it.
Yeah, and I think those acronyms are definitely challenges as much as they're benefits, right? They're definitely search terms, but I think everybody's got a different definition for what that is and what.
Well, therein lies the problem, right?
And that's really where we're all trying to make better alignment. But to that end, it's how do you make the MSPs tell better stories? Because if you really look at where we're going in the future, and this probably segues a little bit into what you're doing over at Empath now. Really now there's never been a better time to be the advisor again. It's almost full circle to when I got into IT because, it was back in the late 90s when I got in and you had to explain to everybody why they needed to buy these boxes then. Now we've got a bunch of digital natives. They understand the principles, but they want to get more efficient. They want more process. And certainly there's less turning the screwdriver for the average MSP. So we have to get people talking at a much higher level. And I think the market's becoming receptive to it. And a lot of that is because of the great work you guys are doing at Empath to make them think differently.
Well, you said that there's no better time to become a strategic advisor. There are some terms that we've been chasing for a long time, which is trusted advisor and things like that. It's been magical and mythical, and I've got a unicorn picture with a trusted advisor name tag on it, which I kind of poke fun at when I stand up.
It's one of my least favorite terms too. I probably hate it more than QBR, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I hate it because the vendors told us we could become that and we should become that, and then told us they thought we could do it by going back and justifying our existence to our customers, which was just terrible. Look how many tickets I closed. They didn't care. But in reality, if we look at AI and how it's changing our industry right now and how it's changing the world right now, I heard somebody say this a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to repeat it and take credit for it. But this was actually words that I'm stealing from one of the biggest MSPs in the industry, one of the big PE roll-ups. He said, "There's no better time for MSPs to become a trusted advisor or that strategic advisor, and it's never been easier." And I hadn't thought about it this way till he said the words, and it smacked me right in the face. It was not easy for us to come in and explain to customers why they should replace spinning hard drives with SSDs, or why they should replace Windows 7 or Windows 10 or Windows 11 or any of those. None of that was easy. Why they should buy cybersecurity, it was a hard conversation to have because we were always challenged to not trip over the nerd words and get ourselves in trouble. AI is the first time we've been able to go in and sit down and talk about, show me what hurts in your business process. Where does sales stumble up? Where do operations stumble up? How can we take things that are hard and streamline them and make them easy with AI and automation? And I could say all of that without using a single nerd word.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, really, when you think about what customers are trying to do, and this has been, forever, but they're always trying to maximize profits. They're trying to reduce costs, and AI is really giving them a clear path to ways to potentially do that, or at least become more efficient, which increases top line too, right?
And we've told them a migration to the cloud would save them money, would be more secure, solve this, that, or the other ailment. It solved none of them. It's more expensive. It gets breached all the time. Like in their minds, it solved none of that. And we went and sales pitched them all that. So the cool thing about AI is it's the first chance we've had as IT to have a seat at the table just to talk about business operations without having to invite ourselves in, force ourselves in, and really try and take over an uncomfortable conversation. So if anybody hasn't thought about that yet, that was my big nugget takeaway, sitting at the table with a couple of big CEOs and listening to them chat about this.
No, I mean, I love it because, when you do go back to the paradigm shifts that we've gone through and, through the years, going back to 2001, 2002, like we've said, they were largely technical, and it was definitely not with as much end user benefit. But when you look at how fast the last 18 months of AI has really accelerated and users understanding it, it opens up doors not only for conversations around implementation, but now it's opening up doors for true governance conversations where they couldn't exist before, because you've got to think about what data you're putting into the AI. And a lot of these companies aren't even educated to that yet. Huge opportunity for the MSPs, right? You got to look at what are the tools, or what are the processes we're doing, and how can they be automated, but even better, how can they be linked? Is there a play for building an ecosystem off of my main application with utilizing AI? So you see all these little opportunities, and the MSPs that hop on them and just become really good at understanding where the pain is and then conveying in those human terms like you are going to win all day long as we move forward.
And one of my favorite questions to ask is one that I stole from Matt Lee. He says, the minute they rolled out AI at PAX 8, the first thing he did was go ask the AI what John Street's salary was. He says, and I was super impressed that we had enough data governance that it didn't tell me. But if we had just turned it loose on SharePoint, it would have known and it would have told me. Yeah. And so these are the things that we have to be able to talk to our customer about and say, well, slow your AI roll. Don't just go out and buy something and turn it on. Let's do this in an organized fashion. Let's feed it the data we want to feed it. Let's make sure that we understand what it knows and can regurgitate, because there's really no putting that genie back in the bottle.
Nope. And once it gets out in the public, the public API or via public API on that way, you're really in trouble, right? So the governance piece is huge. It ties into the cyber security conversation, but now you're getting a more natural business starter to get into that conversation, and then you can spread off from there. So again, you're hearing it out there. I feel that way too. I mean, it's a great opportunity to really level up. your MSP and get out of that commodity driven hole that we sometimes fall into and be able to show a leadership role.
Yeah, and it's so easy to fall into that commodity hole because we all have the same data sources, right? We're all watching the same 12 people on YouTube, going
Yep.
to the same 20 conferences, hearing the exact same message from the same vendors. That is, if you follow this path, it will be 18% profitable or 22% profitable. You can become best in class. But anytime you're chasing a class, you're just going out and becoming a commodity.
Yep. And the other
Everybody
part is
asks me what
you're also chasing the micro trends and not looking at the macro environment, right?
everybody asks me what I would do if I started an MSP tomorrow, and I'm like, I'd stand up an MSP on G Suite because all of you would give me a customer. Every last one of you has one customer stuck on G Suite that you hate. That if
Yep.
I wrote you a check for it, you just give it to me. And what's the
Well,
number
I
one
think,
problem you hear from MSPs? I don't get enough leads.
yep. And I think in this day and age too, starting your own help desk day one, those kind of things, all that's commodity driven materials that you can plug and play into your environment. But what can't change is driving the customer forward and really
Yep.
playing part management consultant with them, trying to understand their business needs, understand what their financial drivers are, and then lining up technology from there. But you and I
That and
drank that
that's
Kool-Aid for a long time. I'm still drinking it. So it's
Well, and
easy
you
for
should
me
be
to
because
say.
that's the one thing that can differentiate you, right? The thing that differentiates us is what it feels like to do business with us and
Yep.
what the end customer experience is. And that doesn't get spearheaded by the guy who answers the phone in the help desk. That gets spearheaded by the person who's at the table having the big conversation with the customer and helping them improve business outcomes,
And the
right?
problem a lot of MSPs run into is the biggest relationship their customers have is with that person who answers the phone at the help desk, unfortunately. And that's the person that's driving the relationship. And, if that's the case, you guys got to step up and find a better path.
You'll see it on Reddit, twice a month that I left my MSP and three of my customers wanted to come with me.
Yep. All day long. So let's talk, shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the mission over at Empath. I think everybody's familiar with, on a broad scale, what you're doing over there, but maybe you can share a little bit deeper, what your mission is, what you're trying to do with the MSP community. It dovetails off of some of the work you were doing kind
Yeah.
of as adjunct to Lifecycle, but, it's been fun for me to watch where you're sprinkling in new things.
Yeah. So I mean, Empath kind of came about that we were exiting ScalePad. Lifecycle Insights had been acquired by ScalePad. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I really didn't know. But my fiance and I decided we were going to move down to Tampa and just be close to the MSP ecosystem. There was just a lot of opportunity down here, so we're packing our things and headed to Tampa. And I call this Wes Spencer guy. I'm like, Wes, I don't know you that well, but we know each other in passing pretty well. I just have some questions. I know you live out in Tampa. Where are the areas I ought to be looking at to live? And he starts telling me the great places to live and the great things to do. And then he goes, well, I got you on the phone. I want to show you an idea I've got. And he literally told me, I want to teach cybersecurity to MSPs and I want to build this portal and do it over here. And I said, Wes, that's a terrible idea. Don't do it. He says, why? And I said, MSPs already have 47 portals to log into. They don't need another one. And they need to learn a lot more than just cybersecurity. So, you got to teach a lot more than just cybersecurity to be successful with this thing. And he goes, appreciate the feedback. And he gets off the phone. And what I realize now is that that's the kind of thing that keeps Wes Spencer up for days at a time. He probably didn't sleep for 2 weeks, but then he called me back and he said, I've been thinking a lot about what you said to me. And I don't know how to do this without building a portal. So I'm going to build a portal. And I don't know how to teach anything other than cybersecurity. So unless you're coming along for the ride, I'm going to go build a cybersecurity training portal. And I went, that's a terrible idea. I'm in. And off we went. Like, I have a ton of respect for Wes, and just the opportunity to work with him was something I couldn't pass up. So Wes and I start talking about this for a couple days or a couple weeks. I don't remember. And we came down to the fact that I could teach a lot of sales and, the account management side of the business. There's a nice overlap between account management and VCIO and the cybersecurity stuff that he's really good at. And we had that side of the business really covered, but there's this whole part of the business around cashing checks and running a help desk and all that other crap that I wasn't really good at. And that neither one of us felt like we should be lecturing folks and helping guide education and learning on. So we went and found the smartest person we knew. It turned out to be Kyle Christensen. And we dragged him on and said, hey, Kyle, I know you've got a really great consulting gig and you're making a ton of money. How'd you like to be broke with us? And he said, that sounds fantastic. It's kind of that's a terrible idea. I'm in. And so we started and we built the thing in a little tool called Mighty Networks, which is literally designed for yoga teachers to keep their community around them. It's really not designed for what we were doing, but we wanted to prove it could work. And what we decided was we wanted to be a place where we could aggregate and teach all of the best information in the MSP space. And we knew between the three of us, we didn't know it all. We couldn't teach it all. This industry has evolved past the place where one guy on the internet can live stream you into building a 10-figure business that has a monster life-changing exit that is great for you and your employees. That day is gone. This industry is too complicated. There's too many moving pieces. So early on in the conversations, and the reason I say Kyle's one of the smartest people I know is because he used the words decentralized thought leadership.
Yep.
And he said, we have to build decentralized thought leadership. And that has stuck with me. So Empath is our entire goal is to collect all of the MSP ecosystems, knowledge and learning and training. We know we won't create it all. We're working with vendor partners to bring some of it in. We're working with MSP employees and contributors to put a bunch of it out there. And our goal is to then put it in a place where an MSP can assign it to a team, build out progressive learning pathways that say, hey, Alex, I hired you yesterday from Starbucks, but 3 years from now, I want you to be a VCIO, and here's all the steps it takes for us to get you there. Let's start a continuous learning journey that moves you forward. So we're trying to put it all in one place, track the accountability and progress as they go, and then tackle all the challenges of going to all the big vendors and going, hey, I know you spent $5 million to build a big university online. We think you should open it up and make it accessible somewhere else. And they all come back to us and go, you want to integrate with what? And we go, your university. They're like, did you mean to say ConnectWise Manage? Did you mean to say Autotask? Did you mean to say something else? And we're like, no, we said university. And once they all kind of unpack it and understand where we're going, they see the huge opportunity to just put more learning in front of more people, and make sure that everybody who gets to participate in the MSP experience is growing and learning as fast as this industry is changing.
Yep. And I think the approach model you guys are taking is interesting as well, because you do see a lot of people that go out and become really successful coaches. But I think the best part is the humility you all have in saying, I'm really only good at this, so I'm going to stay in that lane. I believe very strongly in that as well. I know about 3 things. I know them well, and that's about all I know. And,
Well, and let's separate learning from coaching. Like half of a coach's job is holding you accountable to doing the thing that you learned. So the coach doesn't have to be the one that teaches you. You still need an accountability coach. You still need somebody to look at the numbers and go, are you lying to yourself? I talked to a lot of folks about go-to-market on the vendor side. Somehow in 5 years, I went from somebody who built a mediocre MSP to somebody who understands how to build a vendor. Still don't understand how that happened, but I'm talking to a guy about the sales process on the vendor side. And he says, I'm doing an interview. I'd like you to just do a second interview for me and just check out this candidate. And I said, that's fine, but first let's go back and look at you. How do you plan to hold them accountable? What do you plan to do to make sure that they're delivering up to your needs? Where's the training going to come from? And once we establish all that, then I can interview a candidate and tell you if they're, a individual contributor enough that they can run off on their own and survive without you, or if you're going to have to ride herd on them, and without you being successful, they won't be successful, right?
And you're owning a lot of that. And it sounds like you own one of the slices that's probably the biggest challenge in the MSP world too. It is building that sales engine, especially when a lot of times the salesperson is the only salesperson, right? That's when they hire the first one, they're the only one, and they're working amongst a sea of engineers who don't understand failure. They're working in an environment where they're very loud, and it generally tends to be quiet around them. And that support system and that accountability is key. But if you don't have the right training, the owner-led training model, and when the owner goes, but I was able to do it and I wasn't even a salesperson, it's unfair, because they also were working mostly off of referrals, right? And now you've got to teach this person something that they don't know. And it sounds like, your platform can help with that, but you're right back to it. If the owner's not going to hold them accountable, it's not going to matter.
It matters not. And so it's the same as when we had Lifecycle Insights up and going, like our client success team. And we built Lifecycle Insights to 1,100 partners with 7 employees. Like it was a very small company. We did a lot of things in groups, but the number one thing that we looked at was just how many customers are they using it with and how often do they log in? Because we knew if they weren't doing the activity, they were going to fail with the product.
Well, you probably know this from your days doing it too. Most of the time when you lost a customer, it wasn't because they came to a competitor. It was apathy.
Number one reason was I just haven't found time for it.
Yep.
And those same people, every time I'd ask them, I'd go, so is it you haven't found time or that it's just not a priority? And the ones who are really being honest with themselves would take a step back and go, you're right, it doesn't hurt enough yet. Right. What I'm doing is working well enough that I'll just fake my way through it a little.
Haven't had that big block customer yet, or haven't run into, project stall on revenue hitting. It's the easiest thing, and, to be fair, it's the easiest thing to take off the table when services get, accelerated or needs, come by on the service delivery side. But the reality is if you, in any one of these steps, if you're not staying accountable, if you're not having the right person sharing the information with you, it's tough to turn the corner. And it looks like Empath's approach of, the three of you knowing what your lanes are, but then bringing other people in with the expertise from other lanes to share their knowledge, to bring that thought leadership forward. And then, yes, you're right, turn it back to the coaches that they might have to drive the day-to-day. It's an interesting approach. It's definitely a different model than what we've seen traditionally out there.
And we're launching some stuff in Q1 that will even make more room for coaches and vendors alongside of Empath. We know the success of this business is about centralizing all of that, which means we have to be open. We have to build a really open platform. We've got to be accessible to everybody. So stay tuned. There'll be some more cool stuff coming.
Cool. Well, we're getting near the end of our time today, Alex. Is there any other closing comments or thoughts you want to share before we break?
Boy, that's a no pressure, wide open statement, isn't it?
Well, I can leave the groundwork there for almost anything, right?
I'm just going to say this: as we're building out Empath, the thing that I'm finding the most value in is something that I blew off way too long in my life, and I always knew, but I didn't do a good job with it. And that was that it's the old everybody has a number thing. Scorecards are one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal. And as I've gotten older and maybe calmed down a little bit and tucked away a little bit of my ego, I know that I'm pretty disorganized. I don't find a lot of time to go look at and review these kind of things. If I can force myself first thing in the day to look at my team scorecard and just ping folks about their outcome and their inputs. One of my reps said to me a couple months ago, just ask him how he felt like his month went. And he says, I went back and looked at my month, and I looked at my scorecard, and I realized the inputs I delivered were exactly aligned with the outputs that I got, and I need to do better. And the fact that an employee figured that out before I had to tell it to them tells me that putting a scorecard in front of them, making sure they know what their numbers look like, and making sure that everybody on your team knows what a win looks like and can march towards it has been the thing that's allowed us to grow and scale Empath as fast as we have. And it's, I say it's about 18 months to 2 years ahead of Lifecycle Insights in growth and, just getting out there. So it's just an absolute rocket ship, and you can't manage that without really clear and transparent. Here's the three to five numbers that matter for you. March towards those every day. And if something changes, it's up to me to tell you that. But otherwise, that's what I consider a win.
Well, that's a big part of it. You got to set the right goals and then have the team marching to the right goals. Otherwise, you'll be sitting there. Nobody wants to be a micromanager, right? And that's the alternative.
No, but that bottleneck at the top of the bottle has to look at those every single day and make sure that they're going in the right direction, and not just look at them once a quarter when we're doing folks quarterly reviews and things like that. And
as saying, right, somebody you can't improve what you don't measure. So if you're not looking every day, we have a weekly cadence that we sit down as well, and it's been eye-opening since we implemented that.
Yeah. So every MSP that's listening probably has an employee that they struggle with. I would say take a step back, think about what winning looks like for that employee, and do their KPIs really reflect that, and do they know what those are? Because in my experience, in my personal life, I wasn't the best at delivering that. So trying to be better as I get old and hopefully a little more wise.
Well, we learn things at every juncture, right? Every one of the steps you've taken has gotten you that education that allows you to share what you do today. So, kudos for being humble, taking the learning lessons. That's a big part of this, right? Yep. Well, I really appreciate you joining me. It was great to finally get to have a little bit longer conversation with you than passing in the hallways at various shows and things like that. Yeah. So appreciate it. But,
let's not take so long next time, and let's agree to get some Brian Doyle content inside of Empath.
Well, hey, I'm always here. I'm always happy to help, awesome. With my very narrow lane of focus. But no, great stuff. And, listeners, you guys all know you can download this podcast over at YouTube, or you can get it anywhere that you get your podcasts. Really appreciate you joining me today, Alex. You've done a ton for the industry. It's been fun watching some of the things you're doing. It wasn't as much fun when you were at Lifecycle, but, enjoying what you're doing now. I tease what you guys did there was great, and it really helped us too. So thank you for it.
Well, I appreciate it, Brian. You guys were always one of those competitors that was above board and building a good business, and you guys were one of the tough ones to stand up against. So you made us better too. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much, and we'll see all listeners next week.